All right, so this week in our session, we're going to start with our lessons about the centrality of Christ. So, Christ should be the center of our lives. We should revolve everything around Him. And that's hard for us to do in our day and age. It really is if you think about it. We have so much that we can. Look, on page 24 is where we're going to start. And so my book looks different than y'all's, which is fine. It's the same page numbers and everything. So the Bible in Ephesians uses a construction analogy to describe followers of Christ. He talks about a cornerstone. Talking about construction, do y'all know what a cornerstone is?
The stone in the corner.
Yes, but you know what the purpose of the cornerstone is?
To hold the rest of it up. I would say support.
Not necessarily support.
Or like a starting.
It's a starting point.
Yeah.
It's a starting point, right? So back before, in the Bible times, they didn't have all this fancy equipment. They didn't have laser levels that they could see exactly where straight was. They didn't have, levels, even just regular bubble levels, to say, okay, this is straight, this isn't straight, like we have today. So what they would do is they would find the stone that was the flattest and the most square. And that would be the cornerstone. Because if that's off, all the other stones would be off in that wall. So they would set that one in the corner. And then from there, they would line up all the other stones in the wall to go around it. If it was off, and it wasn't perfectly 90 degrees, the house would look weird, right? It may not look so bad in the beginning, but the further you get along, the more you'd be able to see they would go in. So that's why the cornerstone is so important. It's central upon that. His place in our lives isn't decided by anything else. The place of everything in our lives is negotiable, but Jesus. Everything else we do, we should be able to say is secondary to Jesus. That's hard for us to say. It's not saying that things are bad, right? We all like fun stuff. Basketball, sports, hunting, shooting, riding four-wheelers.
I mean, all the stuff that you've only took from me.
Video games.
I just love how you went from, like, somewhat city stuff to just, like...
Well, I have grown up in multiple places. So what do you think I am? Just a city person?
No.
Okay. No, I like it. My wife is very much a country person. I've gone hunting. I've done all that kind of stuff, and that all stuff is good, but Christ should always come first. Our life should always revolve around Christ. Let's talk about a modern analogy for being the center of something. Who knows what Copernicus is? Who Copernicus was?
Actually just learned about him several weeks ago.
Okay. Because you had a project to do with him, didn't you?
No, I can't remember what he is.
Okay.
Oh, wait. He has something to do with the Muslims and some start with an O.
No.
What are you talking about?
Copernicus?
Yeah. His was it to do with the solar system?
Solar system, yes.
I don't know.
All right, so, yes, Copernicus had to do with the solar system. For years, people believed that everything in the solar system revolved around Earth.
Oh.
Earth was the
Nicholas
center.
Copernicus.
Yes.
Oh. I thought you were talking. Never mind. I thought you were talking about something else. Sounds exactly like his name.
No, Copernicus. So Copernicus, he discovered something that was much larger. He discovered that something that changed how we viewed the whole solar system. Yes, the sun was in the middle. Exactly. So, and that's true, right? I mean, the Earth doesn't revolve around the sun revolves around the Earth. And that changed.
Wait,
it changed.
Wait, you just said that backwards. Wait, the Earth revolves around the sun and the sun revolves around the Earth?
I said it the right way.
No, you didn't. You said
You said the two opposite things.
Yeah, I said two opposite things. I said, we change from one to the other.
yeah, but you just said that.
Okay. So anyways, so the sun doesn't revolve around the earth. The earth revolves around the sun. So,
There you go.
there you go. All right, so
I wouldn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
so anyways, so as we go through, we see that changed everything, right? It changed how we understood the solar system, and it reworked everything. Whenever we become a Christian, everything reworks to revolve around Christ. Everything does. Everything finds its proper place at that point when Jesus is the center of our lives. A lot of people, and we probably know people who are Christians, who say they're Christian, who are Christians, but Jesus isn't the center of their lives. They allow other things to be the center of their lives, and Jesus is just one of the things that revolves. That's not how Jesus wants to be. Jesus wants to be the center of our lives, Him to be central to our story. We're going to be looking in Luke chapter 19, verses 1 through 10. The passage is in your books on page 25. And it describes a man for whom Jesus had become central. Have y'all heard the story of Zacchaeus?
Mm-hmm.
All right, y'all probably heard the song, right? Zacchaeus was a wee little man, and a wee little man was he. He climbed up in a sycamore tree for the Lord he wanted to see.
Yeah,
Yes.
I like that song.
It is a cool
It's
song.
catchy.
It is catchy. But here we're going to look at this story real quick, because Jesus became central in his life after his conversion. We see here that it says, in the first verse, it says, he entered Jericho and was passing through. There was a man named Zacchaeus who was chief tax collector, and he was very rich. He was trying to see who Jesus was, but he was not able to because of the crowd, since he was a short man. So running ahead, he climbed up a sycamore tree to see Jesus, since he was about to pass that way. When Jesus came to the place, he looked up at him and said, Zacchaeus, hurry up and come down, because today I must stay at your house. So he quickly came down and welcomed him joyfully. All who saw it began to complain. He's gone to lodge with a sinful man. But Zacchaeus stood there and said to the Lord, Lord, I'll give half my possessions to the poor, Lord, and if I have extorted anything from anyone, I'll pay it back 4 times as much. Today salvation has come to this house, Jesus told him, because he too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man has come to seek and to save the lost. Before this experience with Jesus, Zacchaeus' money and his status was central to him. Zacchaeus was wealthy because he extorted money from people as a tax collector. But that changed when he met Jesus. That changed. He changed because his view changed to that of being the correct view, to being what Jesus said, because he had that experience with Jesus. Jesus was the new center of his life. So we look at it and we see that, Jesus needs to become central to our identity, to who we are, to what we do. Zacchaeus was a hated man. We talked about this last week. And it talked about tax collectors back in the Bible times. Just as they are today, no one likes to pay taxes. But it was even worse back then. Do you remember why?
Pay him back.
They used it for themselves.
They used it for themselves, right? So what they would do is they would have to pay a certain amount of taxes, just like we do today, right? It's just like, let's just say we go to Dollar General. I had to think of something else around here. Walmart or wherever you go. And we have a state tax, right? It's like 7.5 or something like that %. Well, what Zacchaeus was doing is he would charge people more and take that extra and apply it and give it to himself. That's how he became rich. So instead of charging 7.5%, he may charge double, 15%, and keep the half for himself and send the other half that they were expecting away. So that's kind of like what he was doing. They were thieves. And they were also known as traitors in their culture, because what happened is You think about it. Rome at this point had pretty much invaded Israel. You think back and you think about the Roman Empire and how much it spanned at that time. Y'all may have heard of Alexander the Great. In that. How he expanded the Roman Empire almost all the way to India before he died. Right? And so this was all under Roman rule at this time. And so for a Jewish man to be a tax collector was pretty much, he was betraying his country by doing that. So Zacchaeus had always been hated. But Zacchaeus knew that. And he may not have thought of himself, but his view of himself changed whenever he met Jesus. It changed because he realized that he was loved and accepted by Jesus. Despite what he had done, despite the things that he had done to people, he was loved and accepted by Jesus. And Jesus accepted him, even though others would not have. And we see that in our passage, right? There were the publicans and people came and said, he's going to dine with sinners. He's going to be with people who are sinners who he shouldn't have any business going to. But he's going to eat with them. Back then, eating with someone was a big thing, right? It was like you only eat with certain people if you're in a certain group. You kind of think of it, I'm sure y'all deal with this, you have cliques at school, right? Groups of people that, may think they're better than everyone else, and, they look down at everyone. And it's sad, but that's just the reality of it. It's always been that way. Not that it's right, but it's always been that way. So when we become Christians, Jesus redefines us, and he becomes central to our identity. We're Christians. The defining moment for us is that moment that Jesus died on the cross for our sins. He gave so much for us. He sacrificed himself for us to be able to spend eternity with him in heaven. And Jesus must also be central to what we do. Whenever he's in there, he puts everything in its proper place. Right? Everything gets put in its proper place. The story of Zacchaeus shows us there's only one position that Jesus wants to occupy. It's a central position. Jesus came and he talked about this. And he said, because Jesus had become central, Zacchaeus changed his treatment. He changed the way that he started to treat others. He said, I'll give half of what I own to the poor. And if I have extorted anyone money, I will pay them back 4 times. That's like if I stole $25 from Jackson,
You'd have to give him
I'd give him 100.
Can you do that?
What? No.
Can you steal $25?
No. I'll steal $25 and give you 25 cents.
Oh, dang.
Oh,
But,
that's okay, because then I could sue you.
yeah, kind of.
Really?
Probably, yeah. But anyway, so Zacchaeus' treatment of money and people changed whenever he has conversion, and we have to do that as well. And I'm not by any means. I'm not saying it's a simple process for Jesus to become a central part of our life. It is a difficult, lifelong process for that. And some people are willing to, and some people are not. I'm going to read another story real quick out of Luke chapter 19. Or sorry, Luke chapter 18, verse 18. Now this is the story of the rich young ruler. This isn't in your books, but have y'all heard of that story? Well, we'll talk about it a little bit tonight. So it says, now a certain ruler asked him, saying, "Good teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life?" So Jesus said to him, "Why do you call me good? No one is good but one, that is God. You know the commandments: do not commit adultery, do not murder, do not steal, do not bear false witness, honor your father and mother." And he said, "All these things I have kept from my youth." So when Jesus heard these things, he said to him, "You still lack one thing. Sell all that you have and distribute to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven, and come, follow me." But when he heard this, he became very sorrowful, for he was rich. So, just like Zacchaeus, this man was rich. He came to Jesus, but he was not willing to make Jesus the central part of his life. He was not willing to make Jesus be the central in his life. He rather would have his money, and his status than to have Jesus as central. So we see what happened is he heard this, he became sad, and he turned away from Jesus and didn't follow him. And so Jesus was secondary to him. But we need to make Jesus first in our lives. First in our lives. And we see that, there's a couple things I want to point out in some of the passages. I'm not going to read them. I'm just going to summarize them because we are getting, close on time. But there's two stories. Y'all heard the story of Stephen in the Bible. Stephen was stoned for his faith. He went before a judge, and he was sentenced to stone because he would not deny his faith. Jesus was so central to his life and in his life that he was willing to die for it. And we see that. And that's hard. That tells us that, how he died. And then we see also, too, that Jesus, whenever he was dying on the cross in Luke 23, we all know the story. There was three people up there. There was Jesus and there was two thieves. One was on his left hand, one was on his right hand. And we see here it says, the one was like, aren't you the Messiah? Save yourself and us. Get us down from here. If you're the Messiah, you can save us. Well, Jesus didn't, because that wasn't part of his plan. He wanted Jesus to be the central part of his life because he wanted it for selfish reasons. Jesus didn't become the central part of his life. He just wanted to live. He didn't want to die. The other one, on the other hand, made Jesus the central part of his life. And what that shows me is that even though we may be at the end of our lives, it doesn't matter when, Jesus becomes a central part of our life as long as he does. That's what's important in that passage. So I hope that as we go throughout this week that, you look at the activities, you read it. We're in Mark 4 and 5 and 6 this week. And, look at this story. Look at the personal studies in here as well. Because I think that will really help you grow. And if you have any questions or anything, reach out to me. Y'all have my information. And I am more than happy to, you can call me anytime for anything. And I'll be more than happy to help you all out. Math. Okay, well, math